There is a paw print pressed into the mud of a Gloucestershire field, wider than a man's hand, 5 toes without claw marks, the weight distribution of something that walks on its toes and never lets its claws touch the ground. That is not a dog. That is not a fox. That is the signature of a cat built to kill things twice its size. And it was found less than 40 miles from London. For half a century, people across Britain have described the same animal, black panthers, long, low, black, moving through hedgerows with a stillness no domestic animal has. Officially, Britain has no big cats. Unofficially, thousands of sightings exist across the country, and one of them just came back from a laboratory with a DNA result nobody expected. That is the topic. Not a folk tale, not a shadow on a hillside. A wild leopard-class predator apparently living undetected in the British countryside for generations, with new genetic evidence that just made the question far harder to dismiss. Hit like, subscribe so you don't miss what comes next, and stay with us. Before you can accept what left that print, you have to understand why it shouldn't exist at all. Britain has no leopards, no pumas, no jaguars, nothing heavier than a badger with genuine predatory intent. That is the first thing every wildlife guide will tell you. The last cat truly native to this island, the Scottish wildcat, is smaller than your average tabby. And yet the pattern around this print is not one sighting. It is not one county. Reports of a large black cat have come from Bodmin Moor in Cornwall, where locals have talked about the beast since the 1980s. From Exmoor, where an entire farm lost more than 100 sheep in 18 months, to something that killed with a single bite to the throat and left the carcasses almost untouched otherwise. From the Peak District, where hikers have described a black shape with a tail as long as its body, moving along a ridgeline at a dead run. From the flatlands of Essex, hundreds of miles from the moors and hills where these animals are supposed to hide, where a farmer once found 3 sheep dead in a single night, with no fence broken and no drag marks leading away from the bodies, as if whatever took them had simply stepped over the wire. And from Gloucestershire, the county that keeps producing the most physical evidence of all. You want to see how serious this has gotten? Look at what happened on a sheep farm outside Gloucester. Over a 5-year window, that single farm suffered 2 separate kill incidents that local investigators could not explain with foxes or dogs. Bite patterns and tooth pit marks on the bones, the kind of impression only a genuinely large carnivore's jaw can leave, were assessed by researchers at the Royal Agricultural University. Around the same time, a resident a few miles away filmed a large black animal moving through a field, low and fast, gone before anyone could get a clear look. Whatever it was did not want to be seen. But this time, it left something behind. Strands of black hair, caught and held on a barbed wire fence at the edge of the field where the second kill happened. Documentary makers working on a project investigating big cat sightings across the country had been chasing evidence like this for 5 years, and this was the first sample clean enough to actually run through a lab. They sent it off for mitochondrial DNA analysis, the same method used to identify species from tiny degraded biological samples, and waited. The result came back a 99% match to Panthera pardus, the leopard. Not a domestic cat with an unusual coat, not a large dog, a leopard, or at minimum, DNA close enough to a leopard that the laboratory's confidence sat at 99%. In a country where the last confirmed wild leopard sighting should have been, well, never. Because leopards are not from Britain and never have been. So the obvious next question is the one that actually breaks the story open. If leopards do not live in the UK naturally, where did this one, or these several, come from? And the answer is not a myth. It is paperwork. Go back to the years right after the Second World War, when British zoos, drained of funding and unable to source the strict, meat-heavy diets exotic cats needed under wartime rationing, quietly released or destroyed a portion of their big cat collections. Some of those animals did not go quietly into euthanasia. Now fast forward to 1976, when a new law made it illegal for private owners to keep dangerous wild animals without an expensive license. For years before that law, department stores really did sell leopard cubs and other exotic pets to private buyers, no license required. When the legislation changed overnight, some owners could not afford the new requirements, could not find sanctuaries willing to take fully grown, unpredictable predators, and made a choice that would have been unthinkable to admit publicly. They let them go, into the woods, the moors, and the hedgerows of rural Britain. That is not folklore. That is the leading theory among the researchers and documentary teams who have spent decades chasing this story. And it is the only theory that explains why the sightings did not start until after 1976. Why they cluster so heavily around the counties with the densest exotic pet trade of that era, and why, 5 decades later, the DNA finally caught up with the legend. Get ready for the part that makes this stranger, because when I lay this next piece out for you, the picture changes completely. This was not the first DNA result to come back positive. It was the latest in a pattern researchers have been quietly building for years. In Cumbria, a resident who watched a black animal the size of a German shepherd feeding on a sheep carcass had the presence of mind to take swabs from the site before anyone else arrived, sealing them in plastic and driving them to a lab herself rather than waiting for anyone official to take an interest. Those swabs were processed by a specialist laboratory at the University of Warwick. The result? DNA from the genus Panthera, most likely a leopard or a jaguar, since those are effectively the only 2 species capable of producing that particular genetic signature outside of a zoo enclosure. 2 separate labs, more than 200 miles apart, working independently with no knowledge of each other's samples, arrived at results that should not both be possible in a country with no wild big cat population. And yet here they were, sitting in the same folder. This is the part where you'd expect the story to end with certainty. It doesn't, because for every laboratory-confirmed hair sample, there are hundreds of sightings that produced nothing at all. No print, no fur, no footage clear enough to matter. Wildlife researchers who remain skeptical point out that in 50 years of reports, across an entire island under constant surveillance, dash cams, doorbell cameras, and a hiking culture obsessed with photographing everything, nobody has produced a single unambiguous photograph of a living animal. No body has ever been recovered. No den has ever been found. No roadkill carcass has ever tested positive. A population of leopards large enough to sustain itself across multiple counties for 2 generations would need, conservatively, dozens of breeding individuals and a steady supply of prey. And prey of that scale leaves patterns: missing pets, drained water troughs, territory marking on trees. Almost none of that has turned up either. Estimates from big cat researchers put the potential population anywhere from a few dozen animals to as many as 1,000, a range so wide it tells you how little anyone actually knows, and exactly the kind of gap that should have produced better evidence by now. 2 possibilities, and no way yet to close the gap between them. Is Britain quietly hosting a self-sustaining population of apex predators nobody can catch on camera? Descendants of animals released decades ago into a landscape that has, unlike almost anywhere else in Europe, no wolves and no lynx left to compete with them for territory or prey. Or is every DNA hit a coincidence stacked on contamination? Old zoo escapees whose genetic material somehow keeps resurfacing on fences that also happen to be near unrelated dog kills, after decade, after county, always just specific enough to reopen the question, and never quite specific enough to close it. The scientists who ran the Gloucestershire and Cumbria tests stand by their numbers. The skeptics stand by the total absence of a body, a den, or a clean photograph in 50 years of trying. Both sides have half of a case, neither has all of one. Here's what the Black Panthers of Britain actually force us to reconsider. We assume that in a small, densely surveilled, thoroughly mapped country, a large predator simply could not go unnoticed for half a century. We are almost certainly wrong about that. That too. Leopards are, by nature, the most successful ambush predator on the planet at avoiding detection. More elusive than tigers, more adaptable than lions, capable of living undetected on the fringes of human settlements across Africa and Asia for years at a time, walking through farmland at the edge of cities without a single confirmed photograph for entire seasons. A British hedgerow, thick, unbroken, crisscrossing the entire countryside in corridors that connect one patch of woodland to the next without ever touching open ground, is close to ideal cover for an animal built to move low and unseen. If any big cat on earth could vanish into that kind of landscape and only leave behind a paw print, a torn fence, and a strand of hair once every few years, it is this one. Every farmer who has lost a sheep to a clean, single bite through the throat. Every hiker who has seen something black and low move across a ridgeline and vanish before their camera came up. Every DNA report that came back a 99% match to an animal that is not supposed to be on this island. They are all pointing at the same quiet possibility that Britain never actually got rid of what it let loose in the 1970s. It just stopped looking. Somewhere in a filing cabinet at the Royal Agricultural University, in a lab archive at the University of Warwick, and in a farmer's freezer bag in Gloucestershire, the physical proof already exists. What's missing is not evidence. What's missing is enough of it, gathered consistently enough, over a long enough stretch of time, to turn a pattern into a certainty. Until then, the story stays exactly where it has lived for 50 years, in the space between a hedgerow moving in the wind and a hedgerow moving because something just stepped through it. If this rearranged what you thought you knew about your own backyard, you know what to do. Hit the like button, subscribe for more of the predators hiding in plain sight, and drop a comment telling us which mystery animal you want us to investigate next. Because Britain has more of these stories buried in old newspaper archives and police reports than most people realize, and most of them have never been told properly.